Several years ago, I worked as a security guard in a towering office building in the heart of downtown Chicago. It was early December, and the tenants in the building were starting to put up their holiday decorations, which were kept in the basement along with other storage. Most of the time, I stood in the lobby area of the building to act as general security. It was usually an eventful and, for the most part, a boring job. But on one bitterly cold December day, everything changed. An advertising firm on one of the upper levels of the building was having its holiday party. An employee at the firm had gone down to the basement to pick up some Christmas decorations and reported that all the lights were out and the elevator wasn't running to the basement floor. This sounded like an electrician's job until I was also told there were multiple broken doors down there, indicating a possible break-in over the weekend. That's when it became my job to go down there and investigate, since the elevator wasn't working to that level. I would have to take the stairs. I was going down there alone since I was the only security guard on duty that night. I took a flashlight with me since the power was out. I'd be lying if I said this wasn't nerve-wracking. During the annual Christmas party, held at this prestigious country club that my parents belonged to, I was 16 and the oldest of my siblings, who were pretty much still kids. Traditionally, somebody would dress up as Santa Claus and hand out presents to the younger children. The gifts were usually kept in a large sack placed on a table and covered with a red blanket. My dad's best friend Jerry was dressing up in the iconic red suit this year. He was sitting at the same table as us, so when the time came for him to change, I saw him discreetly exit unnoticed by the other kids. Everyone was having a good time chatting, laughing, and watching the younger ones play around on the floor in the center of the room. On the door, too, the banquet room opened, and bells were heard jingling. All the kids jumped up, yelling Santa. Jerry made his entrance in a surprisingly unimpressive Santa costume. It honestly looked like the cheapest thing he could find at Party City. A severe downgrade from last year. The hat and beard were right, but the costume just seemed cheap. Different from the usual costume the club supply. Jerry was a guy that did his own thing. Maybe he thought it was cool. At least he'd had the Santa voice down, disguising his own like a pro. But as he chatted with the kids, the room became increasingly uncomfortable, like he'd had too many eggnogs. Everyone on edge, waiting for something really bad to happen. Little kids can be nervous meeting Santa. I cried the first time I was placed on the fat man's lap at the mall, but adults were supposed to have grown out of it. This happened a few years ago. I was 17 at the time, and in my last year of high school. It was the weekend before Christmas, and my parents had left to visit some family, which gave me the perfect opportunity to throw a raging holiday party. I went to the store and stocked up on holiday decorations, red and green Solo cups, and bags of Christmas cookies and candy. I also got my older brother Gavin, who was 21, to pick up a bunch of beer and liquor. Our house was located in a quiet cul-de-sac with an empty lot behind it, which made it a great spot for a party. Without the neighbors complaining about the noise, people started showing up around 9 p.m. I had sent out open invites to most of the kids in my grade. By midnight, there were probably 70 or 80 kids in the house. Plus, Gavin had invited about 10 or 12 of his friends. It got a little more unruly and crowded than I'd anticipated, finally reaching a point where I was seeing a lot of people I didn't know. Concerned about party crashers, I started locking the door after the guests to keep anyone else from just walking in. Later in the night, when the crowd had thinned to about 20, my friend Lewis mentioned seeing someone he didn't recognize heading upstairs. Concerned, I questioned him about it. He insisted he saw some random guy walking up the stairs. Just a minute ago, the upstairs was supposed to be off limits. Nervously, I ran up to check all the rooms. They were all dark and appeared empty. I went back downstairs and told Lewis, but he insisted that someone was still up there. We both went up this time, checking under the beds and in the closets, but we still didn't find anyone. Lewis, who'd had way too much to drink, went over and crashed on the couch, and I began to doubt his claim about somebody walking around up there. By this point, all the guests had left, leaving just Gavin, Lewis, and me in the house. Gavin was already asleep in his room upstairs. I went to use the upstairs bathroom, feeling exhausted and still slightly buzzed from the party. As I brushed my teeth, I thought I heard a noise above me. I stopped brushing and listened intently, but heard nothing more. I finished up and headed to my room. That's when I heard a distinct thump coming from the ceiling. In a panic, I knocked on Gavin's door, but he didn't answer. Suddenly, it occurred to me to check the attic. Surprisingly, I had never actually been up there before. Pulling down the attic stairs, I climbed into the darkness. Feeling around for a light switch, my hand found a string, and I pulled it, lighting the attic with a dim light. The center of the room was well lit, but the edges remained covered in darkness. Despite this, I got this weird feeling there was someone else in there. "Is anybody in here?" I called out. To my shock, a box in the corner toppled over, revealing a crouched figure, an adult man who darted behind another stack of boxes at the same time. I heard the rustle of a plastic bag from another corner. Panicked, I nearly toppled down the stairs and slammed the attic door shut. I rushed to wake Lewis. Explaining the situation with fear in his eyes, he urged me to call the police, which I did. We went back upstairs to try and wake my brother, but he remained passed out and of no help just then. Police sirens sounded outside. We ran downstairs to meet the officers who asked about the attic. I led them to it, and they climbed up there with flashlights and guns drawn, telling us to wait in the living room. Within minutes, they came back down with two disheveled men, likely homeless and appearing dangerous. They glared at us as they were escorted.